So good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Yue Li. I'm a co-founder, CTO of a small startup in the Bay Area called MemVerge. So at MemVerge, we are basically
Sorry, Yue, could you turn on your video so that people can see?
Okay, sure, yeah. How about now? Can you see me? Can you see me? Or I cannot hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it works.
Okay, so let me continue. So we're a small startup based in the Bay Area that focus on building softwares for memory virtualization. So I will give you some instance of what we built here. So today I'm very glad to share our interesting stories and our experience on making the software-defined memory products. So I will show you some use cases and also introduce the main features of a product. So I want to start with the motivations here. Okay, so what is the motivation of a company or a product, right? So it's very simple because basically if you look at the modern computing workloads, you can see that it basically just calls for more memory. So just here is just few examples that you probably already familiar with, right? So if you look at the latest machine learning model, the GPT-3 is already kind of outdated, but if you look at that one, it already has 175 billion parameters in the model, right? So that if you just take a look at that, it takes more than 700 gigabytes of memory to hold it. And there's now, I think there's newly developed GPT X, GPT and N, right? That's even larger. And they try to use also larger batch sizes, so it requires more memory. So if you look at we have lots of experience in the bioinformatics area. So if you look at there's the latest generation of a genome assembly algorithm. The genome assembly, like especially called de novo assembly, that's the third generation, easily requires more than 512 gigabyte of RAM just for some non-human data sets. Okay, and that's what I will come to. So for example, another one is metagenome assembly that we are working with some customers. They use more than 4 terabytes of RAM. Just for some very simple wastewater data sets. Okay, so there are lots of examples here, but basically we see there's a big call for more memory. You have more memory, then it's very easy to get better performance, right? It's very clear. Or allows you to actually solve bigger problems in a much simpler way, right? Before that, if you don't have enough memory, you use distributed computing, right, to chop the problem up. Or you have to do a very tricky, maybe external sorting algorithm, for example, right, to swap the data outside of disk, outside of memory, and that's very slow and it's very hard to make it right also. So, but with bigger memory, you get back to the original point. You can make everything simpler. But what is the problem with memory, right? So if you look at the memory right now, the DRAM is very, very fast, which is very good, but DRAM is very, very expensive. Right, so then the other alternative is to use very fast storage, right? So you can maybe you want to swap the memory data out to the disk, but storage today we have fast SSDs, NVMe SSDs, which is very fast, but still not as fast as the memory, right? So but the upside for the SSDs is it's very cheap, right? So right now it's like 25 cents, even cheaper. For QLC or even higher, they are putting more levels into that. My postdoc, my PhD was on that. I had a lot of fun with that. But basically, you can see there's a big gap both on the price and on the performance between the DRAM and SSDs. And if the DRAM is not enough, you have to basically get penalized on the performance due to the swap and so on, right? So basically, what we are trying to do is basically we think that the DRAM is not enough. One of our mission is trying to make memory much larger, so that it's basically it allows you to compute larger problems, but in a much less expensive ways, right? So what could be the candidate that can can be used to fill in the gap between the DRAM and the slow SSDs? So we started with our company. Actually, we started in 2017, and at that time, actually, this product was not available, but was about to becoming available. And later, we actually got lots of samples and to work on. So we think that actually initially persistent memory it's actually a very good starting point. So why? Because if you look at persistent memory right now, right? So you probably some of you experienced this real hardware. So it actually has very large capacity, right? Each DIMM can go up to 512 gigabyte per DIMM, right? So each server can easily go to 6 terabyte if you have two socket CPU servers. It's much less costly than DRAM. It's typically 1/3 of the price of the DRAM. If you talk about gigabyte dollar per gigabyte, it also has reasonable performance. It's slower than the DRAM, so you probably already experienced it's slower than DRAM, but it's still reasonable. It's much faster in terms of random access, like comparing to SSDs disks, right? And also it's very interesting because it's persistent. So this is the first kind of in production persistent memory. You can actually persist data inside the memory, and you can recover instantaneously if you do it in the right way. Okay. But however, unfortunately, so you already know that this product will be discontinued. But it's actually still being offered by Intel, but it's actually will be discontinued in the future. But however, by working with this kind of product, we actually build up our whole software stack, and fortunately, due to the design, the careful design we made, so the software is actually able to not only work for persistent memory, but also work for its generalized form, which you probably have already heard about. It's called CXL. Right? So the CXL memory is actually coming, although the PMEM made a great contribution to make the memory system gets involved towards the CXL roadmap, right? Because actually, if you look at PMEM's roadmap, the 4th generation of Intel PMEMs actually will be on the PCIe bus and will actually comply to the CXL standard. So the CXL, and actually right now the CXL memory is actually becoming real. And if you notice the last week AMD's announcement announcing the availability of the EPYC 4, right? So the AMD, the CXL 2.0 is already available if you buy the EPYC 4, which we actually have in our lab. So here I just want to share some pictures of the equipment that we have. For example, here we actually have been testing very actively with multiple partners on the real CXL memory cards. Right here are just some of those sample cards here, and just want to give you basically a quick taste of how it looks like. Right, with CXL, you can really actually increase the bandwidth. You can actually put the memory outside of the box, and actually you can also expand the memory capacity and expand the memory bandwidth with this CXL. For example, here here's a report from a stream benchmark from a very early CXL samples, right? So the performance is not the perfect, but if you can see that the y-axis is throughput, the x-axis is different kinds of workloads from the stream benchmark. The gray bar basically shows that if you have a memory spread across the local DRAM and the CXL memory, then you will be able to actually achieve higher bandwidth comparing to running the workload only in CXL or only in the DRAM, right? This basically shows the promise that the CXL actually is able to expand your memory capacities, right? So later, and of course, later if your CXL goes outside of the box, also it can actually be shared with multiple boxes, server compute servers, and expand their capacity as well. Okay. So our mission essentially is trying to basically supply software-defined memory that has many tiers, right? The fastest tier is DRAM, then the next tier is kind of maybe we'll call the far memory, which is a bit slower. It could be persistent memory, and it could be also the other kind of format or instance of the CXL memory, and maybe there's other memory also. Also, if you notice, there are Xeon CPUs coming out that carries the HBM also. The HBM will be placed, in the green triangle that is even faster than DRAM, and it gets closer to the CPUs. Okay, so our mission is basically providing software that can actually supply this called software-defined memory that has many tiers. And if you look at the past, right? If you look at the history, right? I think the memory disaggregation is unavoidable, and CXL actually is a way to implement that. So if you look at the past, if you look at storage, right? I always compare storage and memory. If you look at storage, in the old days, you put the disks in the chassis, in the server chassis. Now you have a storage area network. You have a storage array NetApp EMC, right? Those basically the sandboxes basically stand next to or even far away from your computer server, and you connect through the fiber channels, for example. Right? In the future, with CXL, you will be able to do the same thing for memory. Just imagine the memory actually gets externalized to a different box, and maybe like this, right? So you have a rack. You will have at the top of the rack, you may have a CXL switch that connects the memory pool boxes, which is CXL box, with a couple computing servers, and these servers actually can share the memory positioned in this memory pool, right? They can share the memory. The memory can flow between and gets borrowed and sent to different servers. Okay, and of course, doing so requires significant amount of software investments, and that's what we do here. And also, just like the storage company, the SAN, EMC, NetApp, they provide lots of very valuable softwares to manage the storage, and also provides fault tolerance and other enterprise services. Right. So similar to us, we aim to provide this kind of capability for memory in the future. Okay. So essentially, what we do more concretely, our product is called Memory Machine. So Memory Machine right now has two very simple categories of features. The first one is we call basically called memory tiering or data path. Is basically trying to provide you the application transparent memory tiering by allowing the application to seamlessly using different kinds of memory as a single memory pool. Okay, so the second feature is actually is a set of in-memory data services software that help to protect or help to basically make the memory more fault tolerable or make the more manageable. So one of the instances I will mention is called in-memory snapshot. It's similar to the storage snapshot feature that allows to protect and move the in-memory data. So I will just briefly introduce each of these features, and also give you some sample use cases behind each of these features. Right. So the first one is memory tiering. So as I mentioned, it's a simple feature that allows you to basically combine near and far memories. So for example, if you use the memory tiering, right? So it's similar to you already see some memory tierings work in the kernel also, right? So as a tiered memory, the total capacity the user or the user application sees is the capacity of the near memory plus the capacity of far memory, right? So it's much larger. And also we have algorithm to monitor, to provide the memory and also monitor memory access, so that we can actually place the hard pages in the near memory layer, and also can position the code pages in the far memory to save the cost. So we provide lots of software features, such as it's very highly configurable for different process or different applications. So per process or per application, you can actually configure what is the near far memory ratios, right? For example, you have some application, you really want to save cost and you don't care about performance. You might want to give a very low near far memory ratio, by basically trying to put most of the memories into the far memory. And if you have an application that really is performance critical, you might want to give more near memory to that, right? So all these actually is user configurable and actually can be dynamically adjusted. Or actually, we have algorithm to auto-tune this also by monitoring your memory access pattern and so on. So that and this application does not need to restart or or restart from scratch. We can tune this on the fly, right? So that's basically a very simple high level overview for this feature. And I want to quickly show you some very interesting results that we did with our customers. So the first one is basically there's a joint genomics institute by DOE. So this is the part of it's a lab belonging to the Berkeley lab, the Lawrence Berkeley lab, at UC Berkeley. Right. So in there, essentially the use case they have is called metagenomics, right? So the metagenomics is basically is an area basically used to is a topic basically help to identify the species, right, by looking at the genomes of the sample. For example, let's say I have a soil sample of a wastewater sample. You want to figure out what are the bacteria, what are the how many kinds of bacteria are there in the water, right? So you take the genome samples and you're trying to use their algorithm to figure those out. And here, basically, we'll just list a few realistic data sets. You can see that. So these are they have their unit is called TB. It's actually terabases. Okay, the genome basis, not the bytes. But if you convert them to data to the in-memory data, it's actually like bytes. So basically, all these kind of realistic data sets requires more than easily requires more than 1 terabyte of memory to compute, right? And many of the data are actually our collaborators, Professor Wang from DOE, actually they cannot compute them because the machines does not have enough memory to do it. So if you have able to compute those, it means that you might actually be able to generate more papers and more valuable insights. So essentially, what we did is we actually published a paper about this kind of empirical evaluations in a journal that's incoming and also in a conference. But essentially, here just a very small sample of the result where we show that we evaluate the different kind of metagenome assemblers, and the MetaHitmer is actually what is developed in-house by the JGI. And you can see that I just want to highlight that if you look at the red bar, it basically shows the memory capacity. And for this kind of very simple data set, it simply uses 4 terabytes of memory, more than 4 terabyte memory, which is much higher than the other competitors' tools. Okay, and you can see that it shows the benefit of the big memory, because it's from this result you can see clearly they are trading off the performance, right, with the memory. So they use lots of memory, but the computation time is much smaller comparing to all the other tools. This is done actually on the same machine. Okay, on the same machine. All right. So now let me move to the next one. So why are we doing lots of actually testing evaluations with memory tiering, with large memory workload? We tested this computation workload. We tested databases workloads. We also tested other things like EDA workloads and others. So we found that there's another challenge raised by our customer, which is essentially the agility of basic recoverability of the big memory. So if you just imagine you have a large database, right? You have large database, the whole terabyte of data inside the memory. Think about the Redis or maybe Memcached or even maybe MySQL or SQL Server databases. So these basically they will build up large states in memory for caching, right? For example, or for main memory storage. If you have a large in-memory image there, it will be if there's a crash or if there's there's a disaster, or if there's a restart needed, it will be very hard to recover, right? So if you restart the machine, then you lose everything in the memory. You have to load everything from disk, which is very slow. And also, if you want to save the states, okay, it's also very slow. You have to basically serialize the in-memory data back to the slow disk, which is also takes forever, right? So you can see that it's always a trade-off. If you ever use the memory is fast, but also it's because it's volatile. If you lose it, then it triggers big penalties to recover. And it's very slow to even make copies. So let's say if you want to replicate the database to a different node, right? Then you have to actually serialize them through networking and also do a write to the other memory, which is also sort of slow. So basically trying to solve this, basically make this kind of in-memory data more agile. So we actually we borrowed the idea that it has been widely practiced in the storage industry for a long time, which is the snapshot, or we call it in-memory checkpointing technology. So with this kind of features as a part of the data services we provide, we can actually persist the in-memory data by snapshotting the in-memory data instantaneously. Using copy and write based technology, and with the snapshot inside the memory, we can actually recover them also instantaneously. If you have a crash, and of course we can clone the memory states also instantaneously. All of these actually we are not the first one doing that. If you look at storage industry, they have done this and practices for many years, and we just borrowed those ideas and of course tweak those algorithms to make them work for in-memory data. Okay, and most importantly, this does not require any kind of modification in the user application, because we simply don't have the luxury to tell the customer to change the application. So absolutely, there's no user modifications for applications. So just basically some quick overview for this feature. So essentially, as I mentioned, it's a copy and write based technology. It's like other storage snapshot, right? So when we take a snapshot, we basically will flush the memory in DRAM and also CPU cache to the file memory. then we basically will use the snapshot algorithm to make the read-only copy. And once and we continue basically monitoring the memory access. If your applications continue accessing memory updates, we're gonna do the copy and write. It's just like when how the OS is handling the fork, right? You do the copy and write, and then you can persist the delta in another page and so on and so forth, right? So this basically with this kind of algorithm, you can actually save the in-memory data instantaneously as snapshots. So this saving is actually instantaneous, and also we don't to make a snapshot. We don't actually need to move the memory to the storage. Of course, it's not persistent, but we can actually trigger, background process. If you want to back it up in the storage, you can do that also. But that's asynchronous, and it will not affect the application can continue working during this period. And of course, if you have a snapshot here, you can actually clone that into multiple copies. That's basically that sort of like achieve the memory duplication task. So the cloned copy can be used for increase the throughput, or can be used for debugging or sandbox testing and so on and so forth. And the clone can live in other machines as well if you transfer the in-memory snapshot to a different node, right? As I mentioned, so you can replicate from memory directly to the other memory, but not through the storage. Then you can actually recover. You can basically recover or restore your snapshot in a different server. So this basically achieves the agility, mobility for your application. Your application can actually move from one node to a different node. So if there's a crash on one node, you can actually recover from different node. And of course, we support the very old style, the data transfer. You can take a snapshot, you can export a snapshot to the disk to a remote shared storage, and then you can recover in different node as well. Okay. I want to just quickly mention one use cases also in the bioinformatics. So this is this area is called the single cell RNA sequencing analysis. So single cell genomics is basically also.
Could you please wrap up in a couple of minutes so that people can ask questions?
So I think I only have a couple of 2 slides maybe. So that's 2 slides. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So this area is called the single cell genomics. In single cell genomics, essentially there are lots of steps. So in a pipeline, right? You can see as shown in the left hand side, you start with a raw data set, you do some data cleaning. Then you do some machine learning algorithm clustering on the right upper corner. Then you do some visualization and other analysis. Okay, so there are many steps here. This kind. So what are the challenges for these workloads? So first of all, it's actually memory bottleneck. So each of these kind of big picture is actually a huge matrix you actually need to fit in the memory to compute. So it easily uses hundreds of gigabytes or even terabytes of memory. It's actually somehow someone is muting me frequently. But anyway, so it's also storage bottleneck. Basically means that you have to save the results into the memory. That also takes a long time. You have to save the bit. And also the third one is it's very long running. It takes sometimes, so for many workloads, it takes days or even weeks to finish. So if you have a crash or a restart, you have to rerun this, and you have to load the state from disk to make it work. So initially it's like this. You have many steps right here. And between the steps, there's a very heavy stage to save the in-memory states to the disk and then reloading back and to continue the second step. All these orange boxes actually not only for saving the states for protection, also for the reproducibility required by the bioinformatics research. So what do we see? And also if you do the machine learning, they have to do the parameter tuning. And you have to basically keep going back to the previous step and trying to reload the data over and over again and try different kind of machine learning parameters to optimize. So what we did essentially is we simply replaced all these orange boxes, the disk IOs, with in-memory snapshot. So before it takes about 1,000 seconds. With in-memory snapshot, it takes less than 1 second to finish. And of course, then when you want to recover, you just restore the in-memory snapshots and continue with different parameters. That also takes only about the tens of milliseconds to achieve. So as a result, right, so we're able to essentially cut the running time of the pipeline, our typical pipelines, by more than 60%. And the main cut is actually thanks to removing the disk IOs by replacing it with in-memory instantaneous in-memory snapshots. Okay, so that's basically what I want to go over. And in summary, we think that in the future there will be much higher demand for big memory, and simply bigger memory computing calls for more innovative softwares. And today I just gave you just two little instances: the memory transmemory tiering that provides big memory pool to our application so that they can compute larger problems, and also bigger memory also calls for strong in-memory data services to protect them and to make them more easily recoverable and more easily movable. Okay, so that's all my presentation. And if you are interested in, so we are hiring. So if you're interested in internship and full-time position, send your resume to this email address. And I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Okay, let's thank our presenter for the great talk. Okay, are there questions from in-person audience? Okay.
Thank you, Yet. So both cases that you presented are like in bioinformatics. Wondering if there are any other areas or domains you see that would fit the big memory.
Yes. So it has just happened. I have a bioinformatics workload here. I felt interesting, and of course, yes. So we have other cases. For example, virtualization. So if you look at the KVM or containers, right? Virtualization. You have machines that runs lots of virtual machines there, like for example, cloud. They like doing this, right? They have lots of KVM there. The KVM there typically runs tens or even hundreds of KVM on a single node. So those cases will typically trigger very large memory demand. Okay, so the other use case we have been basically working on extensively is EDA. So the chip. If you look at the chip companies, they do the EDA simulation. The EDA actually are simulating huge circuits, and those are basically requires for a very high memory footprint. Of course, the machine learning and also inference, right? Machine learning inference with large models, recommendation models that also typically requires very large memory footprints as well. Yeah, we work on all these cases. Yeah.